This time, just like a question which is still resounding in my ears from the break, I will talk about a little bit the methods of meditation, which is fairly unusual. When you have Dharma talks, usually have the great, Dharma memories, also Dharma words, Dharma teachings. But how we meditate and why we meditate, usually it comes up only when you come to a retreat. I do believe that this is important, that from the same seat, from the same person, you hear that. As an introduction, I say that we are truly, really lucky because Buddhism and Taoism met, and out of the marriage, there's a great child. The child is called Zen. Without this child, we would not be sitting here. So Zen meditation became very, very simple, very clear, and very efficient. I would say best of both worlds. Okay? So when we talk about meditation, what is that? As the explanation goes, when you meditate, you return to the mind which is before thinking. You return to the mind which is before birth and death. Okay? Before appearance and disappearance. So if you have this just one sentence with you, a mind before thinking, which is the object of meditation, then you cannot really go wrong. Any formation in your mind, whether it's a sight or a sound, is impermanent. That's why in Zen we do not use them. Okay? We do not use them as the objects of meditation. We use them sometimes as the tools of meditation. But that's not the objective, that's not the purpose. They are a means to an end. So basically, as we have body, speech, and mind, likewise, we do meditation and follow meditation methods that primarily work with the body, with the speech, and with the mind. And since we are in the Mahayana realm, the first is the body, which is bowing. Okay? So bowing is a very important kind of meditation, and Western people usually don't like it. First of all, why bow? Before whom? Don't I worship an idol if I do that, etc., etc. All these checking mind appear. So bowing is very interesting. As Zen Master Seung Sahn used to teach us, when you bow, you raise the Buddha above yourself. You leave your karma behind, and you and this universe become one. Okay? So bowing doesn't mean that you worship somebody separate. Okay? Over time I realized there is absolutely nothing wrong, and it's very natural to bow to somebody who is more respectable and more advanced and more accomplished than we are. Okay? So bowing to the Buddha, even as a historical person, at first culturally is strange. But later on it becomes second nature. And if you know that the internal work of the mind when you bow is really burning all your karma, just focusing on your breath, focusing on your question or mantra, we will deal with that later, and nothing else, then you and this Buddha become one. You and this world become one. That's the meaning of bows. Okay? Nothing else. Okay? So I spoke about the basic direction as attaining the mind which is beyond life and death, beyond birth and decay. And that's the primary objective of Zen meditation, nothing less. There are many, many reasons why you can meditate. But as I outlined in the 4 principles of Zen, why we meditate in Zen means we attain total liberation. Okay? Nothing less. So that's the body. But the body meditation does not stop with bowing. It's really done in temples or in Dharma rooms at home, outside temples also when you have a designated space for that. But sometimes you see pilgrims in Tibet, earlier in China, these days sometimes even in the West, between LA and San Francisco also. Some monks, sometimes even nuns, they do 3 steps, 1 bow. Now, that's a tough practice, even if you use knee pads. So that's pilgrim practice, okay? You totally submit yourself to the world and just go to the designated spot, and by then you attempt to work off as much karma as you can. There are other meditation types with the mind, but they all have an object. Some people do martial arts. Some people do, flower arrangement. All of them require very specific sets of motion. But all of these motions have some objective. With martial arts, it's attack and defense. With flower arrangement, it's creating something. But bowing is different because you don't create or abolish anything. You just return to your true self. Okay? So that's something which breaks the ice. If I want to compare the work to, achieving a very clear sky without rain clouds and without icicles in the water, it's like breaking the ice of your hardened attachment karma. Next step is speech. How do you use speech? And the answer is chanting. Chanting is very important. Like bowing cleanses your physical karma, primarily, chanting cleans your speech karma. And our speech, look at this. How we use our speech, not just in everyday life, but for really big things. Tremendous. What you can do with this mouth and this tongue is sometimes horrendous. Likewise, you can do an equal amount of good if your speech is correct. You can bring people closer to enlightenment with speech, as well as poison their minds for generations, just with a few words. So speech is very, very important. Use speech. That means use chanting. So when we chant, what do? First of all, our minds join. When we chant the same mantra, or just together, some yombul, our minds become one. That's number one important. Next is emotional cleansing, okay? So usually here in our chest, many kinds of emotion just sit there, and then when you chant, it all releases. So nobody really knows, especially at the beginning, why, but after chanting, they feel a little lighter. They feel a little better. Just by reciting the name of the Bodhisattva. Why? Because their emotional karma already became more pure, more clear. Okay? And lastly, when you chant the Buddha's scriptures, or the Buddha's teaching, or some mantras, or names of the Bodhisattva, then your mind ingrains that. You condition yourself that this would be the strongest impression. Okay? The real foothold in your consciousness. We call that taking refuge in the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And remember, it's speech level. It is conceptual, declaredly conceptual. We use concepts in the right way. Okay? So when we chant the name of the Buddha, our mind becomes Buddha. Chant the name of the Bodhisattva, mind becomes Bodhisattva. It's as simple as that. So don't look for any special meaning or any special mantra. Your mind does the whole job, okay? That's what's marvelous about chanting. You chant Kwansan Bosal, you know it's the embodiment of compassion. You take away your thinking and only keep Kwansan Bosal, then become Kwansan Bosal. It's as simple as that. Everybody here in this room already understands that our substance has no name and no form. That means, in this context, that you can transform into any name, any form. You want to become Kwansan Bosal? Remember 270 degrees. You become Kwansan Bosal. Okay? You want to become Munsu Bosal? You become the wisdom, embodiment of Munsu Bosal. Okay? You need self-protection? Recite the Om Chirim mantra many times. Then, do that. So chanting is very interesting because what you chant happens. Some people call it the magic of the words. No, it's the spontaneous and everyday function of your mind. But when you chant, you notice it. You see this Shinjung altar on my left, on your right? Deities, okay? When we talked about the 6 realms of existence, that's deity realm, the 6th realm. So many Westerners, they ask me, why do people chant to these altar pictures? Nobody really understands when they come from the West. And I say, they don't chant to a picture. Here, in Buddhism, everybody has a basic understanding of the 6 realms of existence. And that is not a picture, that's a door. And when you chant, the door opens. And then deity realm, human realm, become one. Okay? You support the deity with your faith. The deity supports you with correct action. That's how it works. That's why many Buddhists, not just in Choharu, full moon time, also many times outside these great days like Jijang Jail, Kwanum Jail, etc., they chant. Why? Because we want all these realms to become one. So when you chant the Buddha's name, Buddha realm and you become one. Bodhisattva realm and this world become one. Turn towards the altar, recite all the 88 names of the Shinjungdan, then you and deity realm become one. No hindrance, okay? Only take away your thinking, take away your opposite's mind, recite the name, then it happens. So, human mind, as I have said before, is very, very powerful. Okay? So what you create is supremely important. But when we talk about chanting, I would really like to talk about what we take away rather than what we create. Okay? So you take away the unnecessary speech karma and the unnecessary emotional hindrances. That's very important. Okay? And then, depending on the content of the chanting, your mind becomes that. You chant Kwansen Bosa, become Kwansen Bosa. Okay? So this is like melting the ice, which is already broken. So you have the ice field as the hindrance. Bowing breaks it, chanting melts it, and starts to boil it. Okay? In some languages, meditation means heating up the heart. When you warm up your heart, and that's chanting. That's Yombul. Okay? Next is the mind level. And the mind level is also very interesting because then you sit. Your body doesn't move, your speech doesn't move, and also then your mind doesn't move. How? You keep what we say a great question. Last time we referred to that. What am I? Or what is this? In Korean, what is this is imoko. Okay? This very important tool which brings your mind back before thinking. If you practice correctly, after a while, the words of the question disappears and only the question remain. Now, if you think you understand this, then it's only a logical understanding. And I repeat, if you practice, the words of the question disappear. Only the question remains. That means an infinite time, which is clear like space, clear like a mirror, perceiving everything as it is, moment to moment. And the question, what is this, never disappears, but the words are not there. Okay? That's when the Hwadu starts to function without the words. Okay? Likewise, when you practice a mantra, a yombul inside, because you don't like the question. For some people it's too direct, too cold, too icy. They don't like the question. You know? Sometimes too sharp. So then they use some mantra, and then that mantra also does the same job, but then the mind moves in a little circle. Kwansen Bosa, Kwansen Bosa, Kwansen Bosa, Om Mani Padma, Om Mani Padma, Om Mani Padma. Okay? It's a closed circle. You don't lose energy. There's no extra thinking. If your karma just takes this yombul away, then immediately return. Just like to the question. Immediately return. So when you deal with the mind directly, then non-judgmental approach. Very important. Also, the courage to return to your practice moment to moment, whatever appears in your mind. Very important. The sixth patriarch said, do not attach to anything which arises in the mind. That view itself is Buddha. In fact, he heard this from the Diamond Sutra, and then he got enlightenment. Okay? And then when his teaching was really refined, he said, Bodhi has no tree. Clear mirror has no stand. Originally nothing. Where is dust? Okay? So this is a very important point, because when you practice the Hwadu or the mantra, then you can get to this original point. Okay? And since this point has no name, no form, you can call it originally nothing. But if you're attached to nothing, it's a mistake. It becomes your trap. Because nothing is already a name. Remember that, because great existentialists in the West, they missed this point, and then they killed themselves. Okay? And Buddhism is not something nihilistic. Okay? It's very, very important. So, the third method that we use in our school, and of course in many other places, is just perceiving the sound. It's the simplest and I think the most difficult. In some other traditions they call it shikantaza, or just sitting. They don't pay special attention just to the sound, but to everything. But in our school, the Gwan-eum means perceived sound. So it's said that Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, when practicing deeply the Prajna Paramita, perceived that all the 5 skandhas are empty, and the method to that was perceiving the sounds. If you just perceive the sounds moment to moment, and you go back, what is it that hears the sound? Then your thinking disappears. Likewise, when you recite the mantra, you go back, what is it that recites the mantra? Thinking disappears. And with the question, what's really interesting, you don't have to go back anywhere, because the question is already pointing to what is this. That's why it's so direct. That's why it's so impalatable for a few people, and that's okay. Fortunately, we don't have the same karma, so we don't have the same approach, we don't have the same method. Okay? There are many methods. But one of them you may want to use. Because if you don't, then everything remains just here in your cortex, and that's of no use when the big crisis comes. Okay? So these are the 3 basic methods dealing with body, speech, and mind. And when you deal with the mind, as I mentioned, bowing as breaking the ice, chanting as warming up the water, just sitting is like blowing the clouds away, the white clouds, and then only the clear sky remains, without any hindrance. So you see how the levels of the metaphor build on each other, and I have to use this metaphor not just to give you a little Zen cartoon, but to actually give you the methodical approach. Why? Most people in the West, they want to sit right away. They sit down and they want to go nuts after 5 minutes, because all their unfinished karma very strongly appears, and their mirror mind, their not moving mind, is not strong enough. So that's when they get some Zen sickness. Okay? Many beginners have that problem. So they sit down, and immediately all their unfinished emotional karma, physical karma, cognitive karma, they just hit like an avalanche. Okay? And that's too much. So if we look at tradition, how they used to get people into the sonpang, into the Zen room, we see that at first they had to work. It was working Zen. They were hengjas. It means love action. Okay, that's before they became samis or saminis. Then they spent 4 or 5 years as novices. That's when they did a lot of bowing and chanting. To the present day, in the Cheong-lims, in the 5 major temples of Korea where full training is given, and also in the Kangwons, they do that. Lots of bowing, lots of chanting, and in the first years, lots of work. Why? To break the ice. If you don't break the ice, it falls on you, crashes on you. Then, not so good feeling, okay? So that's when in the West people said, I don't want this, chanting and bowing. I want to sit right away and get enlightened, because the Buddha was also sitting, so I want to do the same thing. So they sat down, and in a few months, some of them went a little cuckoo. And they said, cuckoo. Why? They couldn't take it. Okay? So we say consciousness is a little broken. Broken because too much karma appeared and they couldn't absorb it, couldn't digest it, couldn't reflect it. Okay? That's a major problem. So tradition is not an accident. It's not just a spontaneous evolution of, dinosaurs into humans, It's a very systematic approach to meditation. And we don't have to trust that right away. But when we have a problem, let's look at this 2,500 years of experience accumulated in the present schools, and we might want to use something which helps us. It doesn't mean that we become robots and we just blindly follow some words or some methods. But if we start and the method seems insufficient, it doesn't mean that the method is wrong. It means that we may not apply it correctly. Okay? Any questions?
When you mention about meditation with practice like a bow, body and speech, and last mind.
Yeah.
But is it possible to practice just like me or just in normal life?
Yeah, but you must keep a balance of practice. So of course, I didn't mean that you must move into a temple to practice bowing, chanting, and sitting. But for instance, in our school, every single day, bowing, chanting, sitting. That's morning practice. Evening, chanting and sitting. And if you want, also bowing at your leisure. Why? Zen Master Seung Sahn recognized that if you want to deal with your karma as a beginner, sitting is not enough. Chanting also alone, not enough. Bowing, of course, alone is not enough. So he did all of these, and he was teaching all of these. Okay? That's balance. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you for your attention.